Hello there my Gummy Knights and welcome back to the Echo Chamber. Now getting back into what if Krillin trained with King Kai after being killed by Tambourine. When last we left off we concluded both the Battle of Gods and Resurrection of F-Arcs, with a lot of things going similar to as they did in canon, but there were some major differences that happened between the two. Things such as both Krillin and Gohan being far more involved in the story at that point than what they were originally. Krillin even showing off a new form that had put him massively above where he was originally in canon. Speaking of which, the same can be said for people like Piccolo, who ended up pulling out the surprise win against Frieza by also revealing a new transformation, one that he had ended up developing under his training and too lich with the Kais. But in the end, Champa came down and had the same interactions that he did with Beerus as he did originally, thus prompting the Universe 6 tournament, where the winner will receive a wish from the Super Dragon Balls. And in that same vein, I do believe that the overall wish would not change, so with that being said, let's get into it right now. So now with the Universe 6 tournament being set into motion, Beerus ends up going to Goku and Vegeta, who are currently on his planet, in order for them to gather a team, telling them exactly what's going on with the situation and what is at stake, demanding that the team that they chose would win or else. The Universe team that's going to be going to fight against Universe 6 is pretty stacked. A team that I would argue is not only more powerful than the one that went originally in canon, but also more suitable for the task at hand, with the roster consisting of Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Krillin, and Piccolo. No real need for Monaka or Boo here. That being the fact that Boo was pretty much chosen as a last resort because there wasn't that many strong fighters in Universe 7 at the time, and Monaka being a ruse by Beerus in order to simply prompt Goku and Vegeta to get stronger, saying that there were more people out there that they would have the ability to face and they were managing to reach the levels closer to his power. So essentially there is no need for them. Nobody really needs the motivation, as they have plenty of motivation within and of themselves, and there are so much more people that are stronger than Boo, including pretty much everyone that I've mentioned here. With that being said, we move over to the training portion of this arc, which I would say that the only difference being is that everyone goes into the Higher Time Chamber for 3 years. This means that the entire team would essentially get the same 3-year training that Goku and Vegeta got originally. And don't worry, I'm pretty sure that then they can compensate for the food issue by just simply putting more food in there, to compensate for the fact that there will be a large number of Saiyans. But even in that regard, it will just be mostly Goku and Vegeta who would be eating an exorbitant amount. Regardless, the training itself is pretty much minimal, not necessarily due to the fact that the team isn't taking it seriously, but they realize that they're probably as strong as they absolutely need to be. In fact, given the amount of power that they've already showcased, I would say that they're having a bit more of an overconfidence issue. But since you guys pretty much already know about the Universe 6 team, you can understand why this is. So don't get me wrong, they are indeed taking it seriously, but mostly they're going to be honing their techniques and helping master more so their transformations that they have achieved, rather than doing any super hardcore training in order to boost themselves up in terms of power. Especially because even if it is a power lacking issue, they do have a lot of hacks that can help minimize that gap. And with that, those 3 days come and go. 3 years for our people inside the time chamber. All of them come out, and the scene pretty much goes the same way as it did in canon, up until the point to where the first match is about to begin. Krillin is actually the one who steps up to the plate first, scheduled to take on none other than Frost. And pretty much it's not even close, just as you guys probably suspected. Krillin is essentially bullying Frost all over up and down the ring, even forcing him to transform, which Krillin had basically acknowledged the idea that maybe if this was decades ago, Frost might have had a chance. But here right now, he's already seen him been there and done that. He's got no real time to play around with Frost. But don't worry, Frost still tries to cheat and use his whole little needle thing, but it doesn't actually end up working on Krillin, because Krillin has developed so much key sensory abilities that you can kind of just see through Frost right away. His whole good guy persona not really doing anything to face Krillin at all, and you can understand the malice that goes into him. His sense being so good, they can actually even feel the poison within on the needle. So when Frost tries to catch Krillin off guard and go for the attack, he ends up being stopped, and Krillin just knocks him out of the ring, never even needing to use Kaioken, or even the Kame no Satori. Next up is Jiggy the Pooh. Oh, I'm sorry, I do mean to say Bultamo. And once again, it's another stump in Krillin's favor. Of course, his durability and shock absorption is something that Krillin takes notice of. He basically finds a trick around it, hitting Bultamo so hard that he essentially sends him flying out of the ring, even if Bultamo actually wasn't hurt by the attack. The impact was just so great it managed to launch him, very much akin to the way Gohan didn't determine the power, except whereas he took multiple punches, Krillin only needed the one. Next up is Vegeta, and whereas his body being virtually indestructible is somewhat of a problem, at this point you guys have seen Krillin enough to know that he is one of the primary roast gods within this series, so eventually he would just get fed up with the BS and essentially start insulting Vegeta, at which point he would discover his weakness, and therefore it's another L for Universe 6. Now, to be fair, I know some people are going to question, well, why did you skip Kaba, because doesn't Kaba come before Vegeta? And whereas that's something that is fine to bring up, the reason why I skipped over it is because, well, there is no Super Saiyan. I'm just going to be honest with you, it's another stump, but Krillin doesn't really have the capacity to teach Kaba how to go Super Saiyan. Sure, he basically mentions it to him and saying that someday he can access it, and even points out that Goku and Vegeta and even Gohan all have access to it, and that he kind of tells him that it's a specialized trigger, but that's something he would probably have to discover on his own. Krillin couldn't really train him how to do that, says the way Krillin managed to achieve his transformation isn't the same way that Kaba could achieve his. So regardless of whether the fight came before or after, it was not of note to really mention or bring up. It just would have been a wash in Krillin's favor, with him being like, hey Kaba, guess what? You can achieve a high level of form, so you should work towards that. And with that brings us right over to our last fight against the GOAT of Universe 6, that of course being the Assassin Hit. And finally, we have an engagement that's actually worth talking about, especially given the fact that in this What If, Krillin and Hit would actually be very similar in terms of their personality and how they operate when it comes to their skills and abilities and how they choose to utilize them. Of course, Hit has a bit of an advantage given the fact that he can essentially just move forward in time and in other words predict the future. I know this differentiates from the anime and manga, but I usually like to tend to use anime continuity because I feel the power scaling is much better and a lot more consistent. Don't get me wrong, there's still some wonky areas, but yeah, it's a lot better than the manga's kind of scaling down of a lot of the abilities and hacks that some of these characters have, Hit being one of the biggest examples. But that's neither here nor there. As the fight starts, the two begin to go at it furiously. Hit actually surprised at Krillin's tactics and ability to be able to keep up with him. Because keep in mind, Hit is over 1,000 years old and has been honing his techniques for an entire millennia. So he definitely has the experience over Krillin. But if you remember, King Kai actually said back in the day towards Goku that training under him would be like getting 10,000 or even 1,000 years in regards to a lifetime worth of training. I think that given Krillin's journey and how he chooses to apply his abilities, this is something that really helps him better fight off against opponents who may have more experience than him. Regardless, Krillin does end up eventually being overwhelmed due to the fact that Hit can essentially hit through time, hitting varieties of pressure points and ignoring durability on Krillin's body. Therefore, it actually doesn't really matter how strong Krillin is, he can't really avoid somebody who can increase his ability by moving forward through the future, essentially having dominance over time itself. But never let it be said that Krillin is a quitter, as he began to develop a strategy that he would hope would give him the edge in overcoming Hit's abilities, allowing Hit to actually make several points of contact so that way Krillin can figure out exactly what his pattern was and thus figure out exactly where he would be attacking from. But not only that, due to the Force Spirit Fission and Krillin's extraordinary sensory abilities, he'd not only be able to pinpoint the exact attack and its location, but also understanding the entire flow of energy, and thus slowly but surely, he actually began to redirect a lot of Hit's energy away from him and started to weakening him, thus throwing off Hit's pattern, his timing, his skill, and also his power. Hit immediately took notice of this, realizing that even though he was the one putting all the pressure on Krillin, he was somewhat on the back foot, which didn't really make any sense. This allowed Krillin to start going for his counterattack, basically trying to keep Hit on his toes so that way he can find an opening to be able to strike. This is actually a similar tactic he used back in the Cell games against Cell, and thus Krillin is able to turn the fight around, now actually gaining an advantage over Hit, forcing him to stay on his toes and not make any mistakes if he wanted to turn the tide of this battle. Krillin was not only using his more signature key attacks in a more efficient way, but he also even developed some new ones, things such as an explosive clone construct made of ki, a technique that he actually adapted from the multiform, him using them to great effectiveness, tricking Hit several times, allowing Krillin to gain even more of an advantage by blowing Hit back, and thus, like I said, keeping him on his toes so that way he could put more pressure on. But even with the advantage that Krillin now possessed, Hit was a trooper and was not deterred in the slightest. And after regaining his composure, he further skipped through time, evolving his abilities even more, far past what Krillin was capable of in that moment, prompting him to go into his highest transformation, as Krillin instinctually knew that he would have to, given the fact that he recognized almost immediately that no matter what level of Kaioken he would use to try to boost him, it would not close this gap. But despite going into his strongest state, it being vastly more powerful than when he first showcased it, showing indeed that Krillin had transcended into the realm of the gods in terms of his power and abilities, it was all for naught, as it didn't really matter against Hit's overwhelming advantage that he now possessed. It almost seemed limitless the amount of evolution Hit was undergoing in this fight in order to be able to aggress his powers to stay ahead of Krillin. And try as he might, he was not able to overcome this, thus meaning that Krillin would be knocked out of the ring and eliminated from the tournament. But Hit, being the respectable warrior that he is, essentially thanks Krillin for the challenge, as it had been ages since somebody had ever pushed him that far, and saying that thanks to him, he had now evolved and gotten even stronger than he ever was before. Krillin couldn't help but smile at this and thanked him as well, for he too had evolved during this fight. The two warriors giving each other a thumbs up before a 10-minute reprieve was called, and both went back to their stands. Beerus and Whis actually ended up praising Krillin, again doting on the fact that Krillin has such immense potential. Whis specifically noting that Krillin was getting closer and closer to achieving a state of mind and being at which he was trying to help train and push the fighters towards, pointing out that aside from Goku, he was the closest one to achieving it. After the time allotted, the one next to step up to the plate against Hit was none other than Gohan, him showcasing that immense level of confidence that he's well known for, saying that he would be the one to put down Hit. An arrogant smirk placed across his lips. Hit took notice of this cockiness and told Gohan that he shouldn't be so boastful, as he was pretending that he's already won this battle, which Hit reiterated couldn't be further from the truth, asking Gohan directly if he was really prepared to fight him. To which Gohan responded, "Fight you? No, I'm gonna beat you." The tension in the air could really be felt now. All eyes now dead focus on the arena, awaiting with bated breath to see who would triumph in the outcome of this battle. Gohan kicking this off by going straight up into Super Saiyan Blue, it being showcased for the first time ever within this What If, him pushing to his maximum power when using the form, with such a large spike in energy and power throwing Hit off guard, creating the first opening for Gohan, which he uses to his advantage, rocketing towards Hit and slamming a powerful fist right into his face, before following this up with a combo attack very much akin to Bardock's final Revenger. And thus, after Gohan had knocked Hit into the air, he quickly used a double axe hammer to slam him right back down towards the arena, and not missing a beat, firing a Gallic gun that followed right after Hit, slamming right into him as he reached the ground. That last attack putting a smile on Vegeta's face, as he couldn't help but show pride in his former student's abilities, noting to himself that was a flawless execution of the technique. But Hit, although hurt, was not out of the fight just yet, prompting Gohan to ask what's coming back down to the arena if Hit was ready to yield. Hit, snickering at the idea, stands up and dusts himself off, saying that this battle has only just begun. Him acknowledging that Gohan was worthy, and thus he decided to use his full power, no longer holding back, him using the time skip to the fullest effect that he could muster, putting Gohan immediately on the back foot in the defensive, as he was now getting hit with blow after blow, the attacks being so ferocious that they initially put Gohan down, albeit not for the count, but it did cause him to de-transform from Super Saiyan Blue, with Hit stopping the onslaught just for a moment, asking Gohan if he wanted to continue. But Gohan, full of pride, stood back up screaming hell yeah, as he went back into Super Saiyan Blue and charged again. But Hit figured the result would be the same. Unfortunately for him, he was wrong about this. This showing that Gohan's earlier bravado was not misplaced. This is due to the fact that he had studied the fight between Krillin and Hit intensively, thus allowing him to see the weaknesses and vulnerabilities in the time skip, employing several of the tactics that Krillin had used in his fight, albeit to a higher degree given that he was both faster and stronger, even employing a tactic that was unique to himself, that being switching between Super Saiyan God and Super Saiyan Blue interchangeably. All this stopping Hit's advantage over him and putting the two into a deadlock, both fighters now fighting on equal footing. This prompted Hit to evolve his time skip once more to gain an advantage over Gohan. And whereas this did put Hit back in control of the fight, it wasn't to such a degree that Gohan could not handle it. Gohan did indeed recognize that this was only delaying the inevitable, so he managed to create space between him and Hit, halting their fight for just a moment, expressing to Hit that he too now wanted to go all out and fight Hit at his best. There would be no other way that he could beat him, stating that it wouldn't be fair to Hit if he didn't go at him with everything that he had. Hit acknowledged this and told Gohan to proceed, as he too was interested in his full power. Gohan thanking Hit and telling him that what he was about to do next only had a 0.1% chance of succeeding, but that he was confident that he would be able to pull it off. Gohan expressing mild irritation at the fact that they had to show something like this off so early, saying it was something that he was waiting to use for the next time he went up against his dad or even Lord Beerus. This perked the two up and caused Goku to have a miniature freakout, as he couldn't believe that Gohan was about to showcase that, with Beerus running over and grabbing him by the collar and demanding to know what the hell Goku was talking about, with Goku sort of laughing this off and telling him to look at the arena. This had been something that him and Gohan had been working on while they were training in the Hyperball Time Chamber for the 3 years, proclaiming the idea that if Gohan was able to pull this off, that there would be no way for him to lose this battle. Back at the arena, Gohan began to channel his power, shaking not only the entire arena, but even the planetoid that they were on, shocking everyone, but especially Hit, who was dumbfounded that Gohan still had this much power left. Everything halting for a moment, and then in the next, Gohan would scream out, Kaioken, him now illuminating the entire arena with his aura, but he even took it a step further by screaming Kaioken times 5 on top of it, managing to achieve the desired effect and combining both Super Saiyan Blue and the Kaioken, more aptly known as Blue Kaioken. Gohan immediately blitzing Hit after this, gaining the advantage and overtaking him. Hit realizing that if he didn't do something quick, he would be the one to lose this match, trying to push his time skip to the highest extent, keeping Gohan within frozen time. However, Gohan was able to even blitz and overpower that, moving and fighting within Hit's time skip, dominating him, landing blow after blow before finishing Hit off with the Kame Flash, knocking him out of the ring, and thus being declared the victor. Of course, the Blue Kaioken did indeed do damage to Gohan's body, but he was pretty much fine. Aside from that, things from there pretty much go the same as they did in canon, except this time when Gohan is the one meeting Zeno, he's actually far more respectful than Goku. Although, given his nature within this what if, he's still just goofy enough around him to where Zeno takes a liking to Gohan. Zeno's still suggesting that they do another tournament like this, but on a much larger scale in the future. Gohan basically agreeing and saying that sounded like a lot of fun. But Zeno wasn't the only one who was interested by what he saw at the tournament here today. As we move on, with everyone returning to relative peace and life returning to normal. At least in the present, that is. As we transition over to the future timeline, where Trunks can be seen running and hiding from a certain individual, having restored his timeline to peace and even defeating the likes of Majin Buu, albeit with the Supreme Kai's help, it was finally thought that peace had been fully restored. But nevertheless, sometime later an entity would show up and become the deadliest threat that the future had ever seen. One that no matter what Trunks did, he was never able to overcome, but also one that would rock him to his very core, as the one accosting the future this time around was not Goku Black, but it was none other than Gohan Black. And that was the end right there, guys. Now, I do hope you liked my take on the Universe 6 tournament arc. I know that there was probably some things that people would disagree with, a bit of wonkiness in terms of how the power effects and stuff go in regards to the characters' powers and abilities and how they would mesh well against the other fighters. And I do believe I actually need to make a correction right here, because I do believe that Batama actually goes before Frost, so I might have gotten that order wrong. But like I said with Kaba, it doesn't really matter how the order went, and you could just consider it like me just kind of like changing it up a little bit, because there was a lot of changes in here. And I hope you guys did enjoy the fact that once again Krillin was at the main center of attention. I know I got a few comments about that, and whereas I already addressed that, you know, the idea that Krillin's portion of the story is kind of long since past. Again, he's not the main character, but as you can see in a lot of the stories, I did try to at least keep to the idea that the premise started off with him, and so I didn't want him to get left behind, so kind of like injected him a lot of places. But don't worry, I'm pretty much sure that most people can attest to the idea that I did it more naturally and just kind of let Krillin naturally evolve and grow more powerful over the years, and try to keep it as consistent as I can, just within the terms of this what if. So please like, favorite, and subscribe. If you guys really do like it, share it all around, get this video up there, let people know, and I do hope to catch you guys in the next one. Once again, remember to do all like those YouTube things, like, favorite, subscribe, just kind of reiterating that, and I do apologize if it comes ad nauseum, but just make sure you guys, if you really do like it, you hit that like button. You do let me know down in the comments below where I can improve, or where you think I may have made a mistake, or, you know, anything like that. Just kind of give feedback and general feedback, because I do want to improve. I do want to, you know, make this better for you guys. And don't worry, the next part is going to be coming out a lot sooner than you think, probably within like the next couple of days after this part is released. So just be looking out for the next part after this one, because we're going to be going into the Gohan Black arc this time around, instead of the quote-unquote Goku Black arc as is usually depicted. So I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace. And to all my Gummy Knights, new and old, just remember, this is a man's world, but it would be nothing without his brain and his bronze. And lying is indeed the most fun that a woman can have, without taking off her clothes. Good night.